The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Fantasy. Sign up the promo code SGPN to get a 50% deposit bonus for $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgambling.com, which is RETHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Friday afternoon, roughly 3:45 p.m. Eastern Time on October 11th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode because it's time to get into the semifinals here in Shanghai. Going to preview the two matches for Saturday. Going to preview the Fritz Djokovic match and the Sinner Makic match in a second. For that, though, do want to recap what happened last week and what happened in the quarterfinals. Unfortunately, not a good episode for the pod. Did go 0-2. So starting off with the actual lock, ended up losing with Djokovic and Mensik under 20.5 games at -110. Pretty annoying and a pretty weird end to the first set because Djokovic was fighting. The issue was Mensik felt like he was winning every point in his first serve, and he was losing every point in his second serve. And Mensik was just bombing first serves the entire first set. Now, Joker eventually got a break. He finally got the break in the 4-4 game and was serving it out for the first set. Then Joker got broken, and you might remember the Djokovic drunk forehand compilation against Del Potro in Shanghai, 10, 15 years ago. And that's kind of what happened again, where Joker just kept losing his balance on every single shot, and it seemed like his mechanics just self-destructed in the back half of the first set, really unprompted. It wasn't like Mensik was doing much that would cause Joker to be so out of sorts, but Joker looked really good to go up a break, and then he immediately fell apart, and he ended up dropping the first set 7-6. Felt like he was about to fall over every serve he attempted and every backhand he actually hit. If you know what I'm talking about, look up some of the highlights. Joker's flailing backwards, and the Del Potro video is an all-timer. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, but if not, you're in for a treat. Because the Joker drunk forehands against Del Potro is one of the funniest tennis videos that I could remember. But point is, we saw kind of I'd say a similar story in this match, and ironically, or maybe just pure coincidence, or maybe it's just a thing, it happened again in Shanghai. But either way, Joker fell apart for about 10-15 minutes, and then he dominated after that. Second set came around, killed Mensik, 1-6-1, won the third set 6-4. In fact, the only break point that Mensik had in that 4-5 game in the first set was the only break point he had in the entire match. So Joker dominated about, I would say, 75% of the match, and yet he still did not cover the 20.5, which is kind of annoying. So it is what it is, but Joker had just a mechanical breakdown for about 15 minutes to end the first set, and that cost us our bet. So pretty unfortunate there. For the dog, took the value for plus 170. Didn't get there, though, as Sinner ended up dominating as Medvedev. We thought that it was going to be a potential war at over 2.5 sets. Didn't get there, as Sinner won very comfortably. Seemed like the match was kind of over in about 10 minutes. Sinner got up a break immediately. He was dominating, and it just seemed like Medvedev couldn't really get into the rallies as, I'd say, consistently as he wanted to. Sinner was very aggressive. It worked out. The speed of the courts played to his advantage, but Medvedev also couldn't return. Sinner was just dominating his service games, and it just felt like Medvedev never really had a response to it as Sinner won comfortably. So quickly getting into the actual recap of the quarters. Did go through a couple of matches a second ago, but I'll do it once again just in a bit more depth here. Starting off with the two matches on Thursday. I said before, Sinner dominated Medvedev 1-6, 1-6-4. Medvedev really never stood a chance. You ended up seeing Medvedev have one break point the entire match, and he did not break. So Sinner won 82% of the first serve points, 63% of the second serve points. Medvedev only won 19% of his second serve points, which is just embarrassing. But the point is, Sinner dominated, and that was a very easy win for him. Then you had the upset of the tournament as Makic was able to beat Alcaraz. Fun match, very competitive, 7-6, 7-5. Makic looked very sharp. I thought Alcaraz looked decent as well, but it just seemed like Makic was just a bit more aggressive on the return games, and it just seemed like eventually the pressure and the mix of power and precision from the Makic strokes just got him the breakthrough, as we ended up seeing a 7-6 first set. Pretty straightforward, as you ended up seeing no breaks in the entire first set. Then the second set had some breaks, but you did see Makic eventually break through in the 5-5 game, as he got the job done there, as he was able to hit a couple shots down the line in the returns. But Alcaraz, I thought, played fine. Makic just played great, just simply put. I thought that his overall forehand was extremely piercing. I use that word. And I just feel like Alcaraz was constantly, I don't want to say overpowered, but it felt like Makic was aggressive. He wasn't scared of the moment, and he took it. And it just felt like he was willing to go down on his own racket. He was going to take the points, and if he won, he won. If he lost, he lost. And he ended up winning. So overall, nice job there by Makic. Go through the stats there. Alcaraz did win more for serve points, as he was able to win 76% of the first serve points, but he ended up winning 55% of the second serve points, where Makic was able to win 2% more on second serves, but 6% less on first serve. So once again, it was a very close match, despite the straight set win there for Makic. But Alcaraz was fine. The issue was he just couldn't convert break points. Makic saved 7 of 8, and Alcaraz only saved 2 out of 4. So I thought that Makic made the most of his opportunities, and he got the job done there in straight sets. Fun match, but if you took Makic in straight sets, you had yourself a very nice day. You probably deserve a vacation. Anyway, moving on to the matches for Friday. Fritz beat Goffin comfortably. I can't say I'm totally shocked, but I was hoping Goffin would keep it more interesting. They had some breakpoint chances here. I mean, Goffin got broken 3 times. He did have 4 breakpoints to get 1 break in there, but it just felt like Fritz, once again, was just too solid on the first serve. Main difference, though, the second serve, as Fritz won 70% of his second serve points. Goffin won 35. Anytime you double your opponent's second serve win percentage, you're going to win, and that's what happened in this one. So that really came down to the second serve differential, and Goffin was not able to punish it, while Fritz was very able to punish it, and you just ended up seeing Goffin lose a pretty interesting matchup. Nothing that was that, I'd say, drama-filled, but Fritz did win in straight sets, and once again, you had Djokovic winning against Mensik in 3, which he should have won in straight sets. It's even more annoying when he dominated the second set, because you could tell that if Joker had not imploded at the end of that first set, he probably covers with the under. Probably. I know it's a different match, and you can't really draw the same conclusions, but once he dropped that tiebreak, all of the yips, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, that Djokovic had went away, and Joker just went back to immediately dominating, and Mensik kind of ran out of gas. So unfortunate there, once again, to lose the lock and dog picks. Can't say we had a great read on those matches, just in general. So not exactly the best quarterfinals for us as a whole. And we'll look to bounce back here for the semis. Now, before we get into the actual preview of the semis, do want to take care of a couple things. First thing, do want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. And a reminder, don't forget to rate the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So you can source the podcast audio only on Spotify or Apple. And please leave a rating and a review if you do so. If you're into the YouTube channel, though, welcome. Hopefully you enjoy the content. And if you are back, thank you for coming back, and hopefully you do enjoy the show. Plus, a reminder, check out the SGPN merch store. A lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch on the merch store. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs, all high quality, all affordable, different colors as well. So once again, check out the merch store if you do want to find something for the tennis show as well as the other shows of the network. And a reminder that we do have a fundraiser going on, as Hurricane Helene has been devastating to the people of Western North Carolina. SGPN is teaming up with a local charity, mountainprojects.org, to help give back. Base donation will get a guest spot on the College Football Pick Show and a ton of gear. Go to mountainprojects.org, hit flood support, help out today. Thank you in advance. Plus, a reminder, please, if you are listening to the podcast, not just this one, before the other shows, NBA, for example, WNBA, maybe even if you want to listen to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, the main show, Sports Gambling Podcast. A reminder, you can also show support on Spotify, even if you are listening to it on YouTube. Thanks for always tuning in to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. If you can head over to Spotify, give a 5-star rating. Only you can prevent corporate gambling from taking over. Also, before we get into the actual semifinals, do want to touch upon a pretty important piece in tennis. It was a sad day for tennis on Friday, or Thursday technically, not just because we lost the lock and dog picks, which is always a devastating day, but it was because we saw one of the greatest tennis players of all time retire from the sport, as Rafael Nadal decided to end his career. Now, I do want to touch upon quickly how successful he's been and where I personally rank him all the time. Now, to go through Nadal's actual history, to read off some accolades that he has, he, of course, has won 22 Grand Slam titles, second most all time. He won 14 French Open titles. That'll never be broken. That's just insane. The idea that you had to beat Nadal in 3 out of 5 sets in clay is one of the most impossible feats imaginable. And thinking of how many people actually did it back in Nadal's prime, there was one year he dropped out because he got injured midway through, but you had the Soderling win. And Soderling is one of the biggest upset winners of all time because he was able to beat Nadal in that match. That was pretty much the only time Nadal lost I could think of in the French Open for about a decade and a half. It was really insane how Nadal would just constantly dominate on clay, and nobody could do anything. It wasn't even about who was going to actually potentially win the event. It was about who would win a set off Rafa, because he was going to destroy everybody year in, year out. And there were a couple finals there against, for example, Federer, where he would bury Federer in the French Open final. That happened a couple times. It was just a complete destruction. And I feel like it just kind of sums up how good of a player Nadal was. Now, of course, there was some negative connotations with that because people thought he was a clay specialist and didn't take him seriously because they thought that Federer would win basically 3 out of 4 Grand Slams every year, and this random lefty Spanish guy would win the French Open. And then Nadal said, not so fast. I'm going to beat Federer in Wimbledon on his favorite surface, on grass. And remember, they had a couple of competitive matches on grass in general, but they had a final, which Federer won. And then the year after, you had one of the best matches of all time, which, of course, Nadal did win. I believe it was 9-7 in the fifth. Point is, though, Nadal-Federer has always been probably the best rivalry in the entire sport. Yes, I know that Joker and Nadal was in theory more competitive based on the head-to-head, but I feel like a lot of people, when you think of rivalries, you tend to focus on Nadal and Rafa as the main one, the first one you think of, and I do think it is worth mentioning that Nadal was very good against Federer in their careers. I'll get into that in a second, but the point is Nadal proved a lot of people wrong who thought he'd only win clay, wouldn't win the other ones. Then he beat Federer, the king of grass at that point, on grass in the Wimbledon final with an insane 9-7 final set, got the job done. He also won the Australian Open, and he won the US Open, and he went from being a potential specialist to being the youngest player in ATP history to ever win the Grand Slam. I believe he was 24 when he won all 4 Grand Slams. So won Grand Slam majors. So once again, he went from really changing a narrative very quickly because people kept doubting him that he was going to be able to kind of break the mold of being this clay-only guy. And then he became the youngest player to ever win all 4 majors. So I feel like that tells you how good Nadal actually was. Now, to go through the actual accolades besides the Grand Slams, he won 2 separate gold medals. Won a gold medal in singles in 2008, and he won a gold medal in doubles in 2016. So once again, all-time great player, accomplished basically everything there is to win on the tour. Do want to point out he did win 87.7% of his Grand Slam matches, which is 3rd all-time behind Joker. And shout out to Bjorn Borg, who's actually number 1. Point is, though, Nadal, 87.7%. You couldn't beat this guy. It felt like for a part of the big 3, or at least for most of their reign, you assumed going into every Grand Slam, who's going to win it? It's going to be either Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic, and I'm not giving anybody else a chance. It just felt like that was how it was going to be for about 10 plus years, and that's kind of how it played out. And Nadal, as far as I'm concerned, was the second best player of that era. Now, Nadal, in his head-to-head history, had a losing record against Djokovic. He was 29-31, but he was at 24-16 against Federer, and the crazy part, Federer actually won 7 of the last 8 head-to-head meetings. So you're looking at the actual numbers, and that means Nadal was 23 and about 9, 23 and 9 or so against Federer when their careers started, and then Federer made it look a little bit more respectable at the end. But Nadal would own Federer most of the time they played. And when it comes to Nadal, I think he's the second best player of all time. I've said this before. I think Joker's 1, Nadal's 2, and Federer's 3. Not just because of Grand Slam titles, but that definitely helps. But I think Nadal will always be remembered for his overall, I'd say, just intensity. I think he's always going to be remembered for his speed, his determination, and his willingness to fight for every single point. You tend to see players take some points off. Nadal really never did that. Nadal was a guy who showed up as this phenom, this phenomenal athlete. I think he might be the best athlete to ever play tennis. You can make an argument Nadal could have been successful in a bunch of different sports, could have probably been a successful soccer player over there in Mallorca, or even just in La Liga if you wanted to. Phenomenal athlete, all-time great athlete, and it just felt like his speed, his determination, and his overall consistency was going to wear you down. He was going to make you beat him, and he was not really going to beat himself most of the time, and it just felt like that was a very difficult player to play against, and it's why he never lost on clay, because his top spin was, of course, sensational, and it translated very well to the courts there in Roland Garros, but it was mostly because you could not physically outlast him for what would be about a 4 or 5 hour match. If you were going to beat Nadal on clay, you had to find a way to break through basically a brick wall and you were not going to do it. And Nadal was going to eventually wear you down. He was going to kind of just suck the life out of you over the course of 3 to 5 sets. And it's why he basically never lost ever in his French Open career. So once again, props to Nadal for an all-time great career. In my opinion, second best of all time. I feel like most people besides the actual tennis will remember the quirks that he had, which were, of course, the OCDs with the water bottles between changeovers, and, of course, the constant wedgie picking with his overall shorts in between return points. Point is, we're going to remember Nadal for a lot of things. The grunting didn't help, I'll be honest. The grunting got pretty annoying, especially when every point he was in took about 35 shots. But Nadal's an all-time great player, and even though I have always been a Joker fan, I still have a lot of respect for Nadal. Of course, I recognize one of the best players of all time in the sport, and the sport's definitely worse off without him. Sad time for tennis right now. We are kind of past the golden age of tennis because 2 of the 3 big 3 members ended up retiring. Federer a couple years ago, Nadal now, saw Murray retire. Team kind of jumped up there at the end as a serious challenger, but it was mostly the big 3 or 4, and 3 of those 4 ended up retiring, which is pretty sad. And hopefully you end up, I'd say, looking back on those years with, I'd say, happy memories, because the ATP Tour might be a bit more open now. Maybe it won't. Maybe Sinner and Alcaraz will just dominate and form their own, like, Federer, Nadal dynasty like we saw. But I feel like we all know that when it comes to tennis quality, Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic set the bar higher than anybody else ever did before. And I feel like with Nadal officially retiring, it's a sad day for the sport. So I wanted to mention that. Shout out to Nadal for an all-time great career, and hopefully he enjoys retirement. And I'm sure we'll see him again in the either Laver Cup or maybe in the Davis Cup coaching. I'm sure he'll be doing something. But hopefully Nadal enjoys retirement, and hopefully, once again, you all enjoyed watching him play, and we enjoy those memories in general. Anyway, before we get into the actual semifinal matches, do want to quickly remind you once again that we are brought to you by Fantasy, because they have a pick'em and their biggest menu. They have one of the biggest menus for all sports. You're looking at the NFL, college football, MLB, MMA, WNBA, NASCAR, and more. They're all jam-packed with profit boosts, United specials, and boosts and Artflix entries. I'll probably do my entry we'll go with Tyler Bass higher, 1.5 field goals in the Monday night game against the Jets. I think it's a good spot for him to kick some field goals. Jets' red zone defense is very good, and I think that the Bills will settle for a couple field goals in plus territory. A reminder, though, sign up the promo code SGPN to claim a special game first-time deposit offer up to $1K in bonus cash on Fantasy. Promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished quickly recapping what happened in the quarters and talking about Nadal's career as he retired. Now it's time to move on to the actual Saturday matches for Shanghai. Going to start off with the first match, which is Sinner versus Makic. Now, Makic is the Cinderella that's remaining. You're looking at the other guys here, and you have Fritz, who made the U.S. Open final. You have Sinner, who, of course, is a multiple-time Grand Slam champion, number 1 player in the world, and Djokovic, who's the best player of all time. So there is one Cinderella story. We'll beat Alcaraz, and we'll see if he can keep it going here if he gets the job done against Sinner on Saturday morning. Now, for the actual line, you are looking at the odds makers giving Makic basically no chance. Sinner's about minus 900, but then again, Alcaraz was like minus 1,100 or so. So you're saying there's a chance, I guess. A point is Sinner's minus 900, Makic is plus 640. For the game spread, you have around 5 or 4.5. For the over-under, you have around 20.5. For the actual set spread, Sinner in straight sets is minus 215. Makic in, I should say, to win a set is plus 170. And for the over 2.5 sets, you have plus 220. Faced off one time, it was actually this year, faced off in Miami, an event that Sinner eventually won. And it was pretty straightforward. Sinner did win 6-4, 6-2. That was back in March. Doesn't really matter. But I will point out they faced off on hard court this season, and Sinner did win pretty comfortably. Now, Sinner has been looking good, and he's looking particularly better as the event has gone on. As you saw him look good against Daniel in the first round, Daniel's not very good. Then in the beating Echeverry, did lose a set there, then had a 2-set battle against Shelton. Not a surprise there, because the courts are fast and Shelton's serve is very good. And you saw him kill Medvedev as he won 6-1, 6-4. As for Makic, he's had a bit more drama in his matches, because he was able to beat Fokina in 3 sets, beat Vukic in straight sets, then beat Paul, again down a set in a break, came back and won that one in 3, and then he beat Alcaraz in a pretty shocking upset as far as I'm concerned. Good match overall. I thought Makic played great. Now the question is, do I think Makic's firepower can somewhat match Sinner's firepower in this matchup on these courts. Maybe for a set. I think Sinner's going to win. I think Sinner is, once again, the fact that he's the hardest hitting player on tour bodes very well for him on these courts. And maybe that's why I kind of underestimated how dominant he would be against Medvedev because of head-to-head history. I probably should have factored the court speed into it more because it just felt like Sinner was bullying Medvedev around the court. I know Medvedev likes to play defensive and he likes to try to keep the ball in play, but Sinner was just coming forward, and it felt like every forehand and even the backhands he was hitting were just forcing Medvedev into a lot of lunging, flail shots, and it just felt like Sinner was constantly just dominating every point. And I'm concerned that Makic, if he's unable to do what he did to Alcaraz, which is unload on the forehand before his opponent can, I just question if he'll be able to actually match Sinner for the firepower. Now, Sinner, once again, has not been overly dominant recently. Medvedev was one showing. But once again, going through this, I mentioned this in the last episode, Sinner has dropped the set in 2 of the 4 matches here, and he dropped the set in 3 of the 5 matches in Beijing. So based on the math, he's dropped at least 1 set in 5 of his last 5 of his last 9 matches. So I think you're looking at a guy who is once again a bit vulnerable. I should say, he's dropped at least 1 set in 4 of his 5 matches, in 4 of his 9 matches that he's played recently, he has dropped at least 1 set. So point is 4 out of 9 for Sinner. I think he might struggle for 1 set. I think Makic has a good serve. The forehand's good. It's not about Sinner not eventually winning. It's about, can Makic hold 5 times in a set? I think he can. So I think based on that, I am going to go with the over in this one. I think 20.5 is a bit low. I think that Sinner team total over 12.5 at minus 180 is appealing because once again, if you had a 7-5 or 7-6, you basically win. But I will go with Sinner to once again have a close first set. I think eventually breaks through. I'm not sure Makic breaks him in this match, full disclosure, but I do think that Makic can serve well enough, and I think that he can show enough firepower to at least win a decent amount of games in this matchup. So for the sake of the spread, maybe a hot take, I'm going to lean to Makic plus the games. I'm going to lean to the over, and I am going to go with Sinner team total over 12.5. I think at least 1 set's competitive, then maybe you get a lopsided set. Probably not. I think Makic loses, but I'd say respectfully, I think that he will end up losing somewhere in the realm of, I don't even know, like 7-6, 6-3. Something like that. Pretty straightforward. Sinner wins, but you got a close set out of it. So give me, once again, a close matchup, at least based on the eye test. Maybe not on the scoreline, but I'll go with Makic to keep it close and to lose honorably into this matchup. Moving on to the next match, you have Fritz against Djokovic. Now, Joker is minus 240. Fritz is plus 200. For the spread, you have around minus 2.5 or minus 3 for Joker, plus 3 or plus 2.5 for Fritz. For the actual over-under, you have 23, as the game is minus 110 apiece. For the set spread, Joker in straight sets is plus 115. Fritz to an ace set is minus 145. The over 2.5 sets is plus 145. Now, for this matchup, Joker has owned the head-to-head. In fact, Fritz has never beaten him. Joker is 9-0 lifetime, and they faced off in the Australian Open this year, ended up seeing Fritz look competitive early. Joker won a very competitive first set, 7-6. Then he lost second set, 6-4, and then he dominated, won in the third and fourth sets, 6-2 and 6-3. Fritz, though, has never beaten the guy. I get that his serve and his overall play style is translated very well here to Shanghai. I get it. However, it is a bit tricky when you're looking at a guy who is 0 for 9 lifetime, and Joker, besides getting the yips for about 15 minutes against Mensik in that last match, he has been coasting for the last 3 matches, basically. So unless Joker gets the yips again, where he gets the drunk forehand back, then I assume he's going to beat Fritz again. Now, Fritz has not dropped the set. You could argue competition's been a bit weak. Beat Ottman, beat Watanuki. Rune 6-1, 6-2 is a good win. I mean, that's a phenomenal win. I'll put it that way. And then he beat Goffin, who was a Cinderella, into the quarters. Now, for Joker, he hasn't really beaten many great players either. I mean, Mensik, I do think, will be a future top 20 guy. He's only 19. People forget that. Mensik's only 19 years old. He's going to be a very good player on tour. But that was a 3-setter. Beat Safun, who's good on hard court. Beat Kaboli, who's had a pretty good run for the last couple of months. And he beat Mickelson in straight sets there, too. So Joker only dropped 1 set, and that was to Mensik on Friday. because he just lost his overall, I'd say, mechanics on the forehand and backhand side. So, but barring a fluke, he wins that in straight sets. I assume he wins this one in straight sets too. I get Fritz has played well. I understand it. But Joker has been playing very well. And I do think his overall serve has been very effective. He's only broken one time in the last 3 matches combined. I see at least a breaker here, so maybe you get a bit of a sweat there for a set. But I think that Joker eventually gets it done. And I do think Joker probably wins in straight sets. If I had to guess, Fritz maybe can find a way to win a set here. But based on the head-to-head and based on how often Joker frustrates Fritz with his consistency and with Fritz's potential rally intolerance, I think Joker wins in straight sets. I'll put it this way. I'm much more tempted by Joker in straight sets at plus 115 than I am at Fritz to win a set at minus 145. I think the value is on Joker in straight sets. I think a win in straight sets. Probably a tiebreaker of 7-5 in there, so I don't mind Joker team total over in this one at either 13 or 12.5. But I just don't trust Fritz to beat a guy he's never beaten before. Give me Joker to get the job done in this matchup as well. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual semifinal previews. And now it's time for the lock and dog picks. But for that one, remember, once again, they're brought to you by BetUS because they have been around for more than 30 years. And you can easily deposit using crypto, get lightning fast payouts. U.S. players are always welcome. Sign up and deposit $100 for a chance at a raffle. Chance to win a 1964 Mustang. So sign up with our link. Use the link, sportscampodcast.com/BetUS. That's sportscampodcast.com/BetUS. Promo code SGPN to get a 125% deposit bonus in your first 3 deposits. Once again, BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm is SGPN's proud partner, the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom models in seconds, get predictions on money line spreads, totals, and props, build your own model, copy one of the top 4 models on the leaderboard, or press build a model for me, and Rhythm will give you predictions on every game and player props. They also have a bunch of stats, research, trend analysis, and more. A reminder, you can also try it out for free. Get a 7-day free trial today by going to sportscam.com, sportscam.com/RATHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the semifinal matches in Shanghai. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I am going to go back to the Joker and Fritz match. I have to take Djokovic to win on principle, but there is also one common theme in the head-to-head. Joker's 9-0. He's won the first set in all 9 head-to-head meetings. That's good enough for me. Give me Joker to win the first set and the match at minus 142. So Joker is 9-0 lifetime against Fritz. He's won all 6 non-Grand Slam meetings in straight sets. It has been a demolition every time they face off in 2 out of 3 sets tennis. And Joker, once again, has never lost a first set to Fritz. Joker, besides the 3 games or so where he got the yips against Mensik, has been a complete machine in this tournament. Mensik didn't get a break point besides the one he got in the 4-5 game when Joker had the yips. So barring some unforeseen circumstances, I think Joker's been playing great on these courts. He's a multiple-time champion here. And Fritz maybe makes one set competitive, maybe a tie break. But I think if it goes 3, Joker's winning. I think Joker's going to win the match. So give me Joker to win the first set included to cut in about $1 off on the actual money line. I'm turning minus 240 into minus 142 when, once again, he is 9-0 lifetime and 9-0 in the first set. So this prop is cashed in every head-to-head meeting between them. And I can get it again at minus 142. I think it's a great price. Joker's been serving well, broken 1 time in the last 3 matches combined. I think Joker, once again, gets the job done. Maybe not easy, maybe a breaker or 2, but I do think that Joker will get the job done. I think that there's a lot of value taking to win the first set included to take $1 off the money line price. Give me that as my lock. And moving on to the actual dog, I am going to go to the Makic and Sinner match. A play that I feel like has some value, but shop around. Some books have even money, some books don't. So I am kind of cheating, but not really. I found one book that gave it even money. It's going to be the Makic Sinner over 20.5 games at plus 100. Tried this in the last tournament, had Boo and Sinner over, and that got there as a plus money play. I think both guys can serve very well here. Courts are playing fast. Breaks are pretty tough to come by. Makic has been showcasing a lot of firepower. His serve's been good. The forehand's been good. Sinner, yes, I know he killed Medvedev. I get it. But I do think that Sinner, once again, has been a bit vulnerable lately. We did see him go to a couple of longer sets already in this tournament. For example, I did see Sinner go to a 3-setter against Echeverry that had a breaker in it anyway. Saw him have a breaker against Shelton. That went to 23. So 2 of the last 3 matches here on these courts have had at least 23 games, and the line's 20.5. But 7 of Makic's last 8 matches have gone over this number. 7 of Sinner's last 9 matches have gone over this number. And the court speed's very fast. I don't see many breaks. So based on that, I'll back the overall individual trends. 7 of 8 going over for Makic, 7 of 9 going over for Sinner. And I do think that you're looking at a decent amount of firepower being displayed, decent amount of fast serves, and I'd say a minimal number of breaks. So give me at least one competitive set here. Give me the over 20.5 games at plus 100. This one is available on DraftKings. That's why DraftKings had the even money. So I'm going to use that as my dog. So once again, the plays for the show for the semis, lock's going to be on Joker to win the first set and the match at minus 142. Dog will be on Makic and Sinner over 20.5 games at even money. That's going to wrap it up. Find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Reminder, find me on the NBA show, the WNBA show as well. Find me on the MLB show, etc. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.